At a well-known university famous for its tough math courses, Dr. Evelyn Harper was considered one of the most respected professors in the department. She had been teaching calculus for over 2 decades and had earned a reputation for being strict but brilliant. Her lectures were known to challenge even the brightest students, and she took pride in pushing her class to think critically. However, beneath her polished exterior, Dr. Harper unknowingly carried certain biases, subtle assumptions about who could succeed in her field and who couldn't. These beliefs weren't always obvious, but they shaped how she interacted with her students. One semester, among her advanced calculus students, there was a young man named Marcus Johnson. Unlike many of his classmates, Marcus didn't come from a privileged background. Growing up, he attended underfunded schools where resources were scarce and opportunities for advanced learning were almost non-existent. But Marcus had an insatiable curiosity for numbers. From a young age, he found joy in solving puzzles and unraveling patterns. By high school, he was teaching himself calculus through free online videos and textbooks borrowed from the library. Despite the odds stacked against him, Marcus worked tirelessly to earn his spot at the university. Marcus wasn't flashy or outspoken. He preferred to stay quiet during lectures, listening intently and absorbing every detail. To some, including Dr. Harper, his silence might have seemed like disengagement. They mistook his calm demeanor for lack of confidence or ability. What they didn't realize was that Marcus's mind worked differently. He processed information deeply and quickly, often arriving at solutions before others even understood the question. He chose not to raise his hand or speak up much because he'd grown accustomed to people doubting him. Over the years, he'd learned it was easier to let his work do the talking. Dr. Harper, on the other hand, prided herself on spotting promising students early on. In her mind, these were typically individuals who came from elite prep schools or had parents who were academics themselves. When she looked at Marcus, a reserved black student sitting quietly in the back row, she assumed he was struggling to keep up. She never stopped to consider that appearances can be deceiving. Instead, she decided to test him, believing it would motivate him to try harder or expose what she believed was his weakness. The classroom itself was intimidating, filled with rows of eager students scribbling notes furiously as Dr. Harper wrote complicated equations on the board. The air buzzed with tension, especially when she paused mid-lecture to call out a name unexpectedly. It was a tactic she used often to keep her students alert. On this particular day, she turned sharply toward Marcus and said, "Mr. Johnson, perhaps you'd care to explain this integral to the class." Her tone was sharp, almost challenging, as if daring him to fail. For a moment, the entire room went silent. All eyes shifted to Marcus, who sat still, his expression unreadable. Some students exchanged smirks, assuming he'd falter under pressure. Others felt a pang of sympathy, knowing how harsh Dr. Harper could be. But Marcus simply stood up, calm and composed, and walked to the front of the room. Little did anyone know, this seemingly ordinary moment would mark the beginning of something extraordinary. When Dr. Harper called Marcus to the board, the atmosphere in the classroom shifted. The silence was thick, almost suffocating, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Some students leaned forward in their seats, curiosity getting the better of them, while others glanced at each other, silently exchanging skeptical looks. Dr. Harper stood with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable, but her tone unmistakably challenging. To her, this moment wasn't just about testing Marcus's knowledge. It was about proving a point. She wanted to show him, and maybe even the rest of the class, that struggling students needed to step up or risk being left behind. Marcus, however, didn't flinch. He walked slowly but confidently to the front of the room, his steps steady despite the weight of 20 pairs of eyes on him. As he picked up the marker, he took a deep breath, letting his mind focus. The problem on the board was indeed complex, a multi-layered integral that required not only technical skill, but also creative thinking. For most students, it would have been daunting. But for Marcus, it felt like second nature. Numbers and equations were his language, and solving problems like these came as naturally to him as breathing. He began by breaking the problem into smaller, more manageable parts, explaining each step clearly as he went along. His voice was calm and measured, carrying none of the hesitation one might expect from someone who'd just been put on the spot. Instead, Marcus spoke with authority, his words painting a vivid picture of how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. He started by identifying the core components of the equation, then methodically worked through substitutions and simplifications. With every stroke of the marker, the intimidating integral became less overwhelming, transformed into something logical and approachable. The class watched in stunned silence. At first, there were murmurs of disbelief. How could someone so unassuming handle such a difficult problem so effortlessly? But as Marcus continued, those murmurs turned into nods of admiration. Even the skeptics couldn't deny the brilliance unfolding before their eyes. One student whispered to another, "Wow, I didn't think anyone could explain it this well." Another scribbled notes furiously, trying to keep up with Marcus's explanation. By the time he reached the final solution, the entire room seemed to exhale collectively, as if they'd all been holding their breath without realizing it. Dr. Harper, however, wasn't ready to concede. While she couldn't argue with the correctness of Marcus's work, she refused to let go of her initial assumption that he wasn't truly capable. As he stepped away from the board, she narrowed her eyes slightly, scrutinizing him as though searching for cracks in his composure. "That was adequate," she said finally, her tone betraying a hint of reluctance. Her use of the word adequate hung awkwardly in the air. It was clear she was trying to downplay his accomplishment, perhaps to save face in front of the class. Marcus simply nodded politely, his expression neutral. Inside, though, he felt a mix of emotions: pride in having proven himself, frustration at the professor's dismissive attitude, and determination to rise above the situation. He returned to his seat without saying a word, but the look in his eyes told a different story. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the lecture resumed, whispers rippled through the room. Some students praised Marcus quietly, calling him amazing and a genius. Others debated whether Dr. Harper had gone too far in singling him out. Meanwhile, Marcus sat quietly, replaying the moment in his mind. He knew he had handled the challenge with grace, but he also knew this wouldn't be the last time someone underestimated him. And deep down, he felt a spark of resolve igniting within him. If people doubted him, fine. He'd give them no choice but to believe in him. After the lecture ended, Marcus packed up his things quietly, avoiding eye contact with anyone as he left the room. He could still feel the weight of Dr. Harper's sharp gaze and hear her dismissive tone echoing in his mind. Though he'd handled the situation calmly, it wasn't easy to shake off the sting of being underestimated, especially by someone whose opinion mattered in his academic journey. As he walked across campus, his thoughts swirled with frustration and determination. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong. His solution had been flawless, but that didn't make the encounter any less infuriating. Later that afternoon, Marcus met up with his best friend, Jamal, at their usual spot near the library. They often studied together, bouncing ideas off each other and sharing stories about their day. Jamal was one of the few people who truly understood what Marcus went through as a black student in a predominantly white institution. When Marcus recounted what happened in class, Jamal listened intently, his expression shifting from surprise to anger. "Wait, she really said that?" Jamal asked, leaning forward on the bench they were sitting on. "Like, after you just crushed that problem?" Marcus nodded, exhaling slowly. "Yeah, man. She acted like I got lucky or something. Like I couldn't possibly have figured it out myself." Jamal shook his head, clearly annoyed on Marcus's behalf. "That's messed up. You know you're smarter than half the people in that class, including her." "I know," Marcus replied, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. "But it's not just about me. It's like, no matter how much I prove myself, there are always going to be people who refuse to see me for who I am." Jamal leaned back, crossing his arms as he thought for a moment. Then, an idea sparked in his eyes. "You know what you should do. Enter that math competition next month. The National Collegiate Math Challenge. You've heard of it, right?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, but isn't that for teams? And don't we need faculty approval to sign up?" "We can figure that part out," Jamal said confidently. "Look, this is your chance to show everyone, Dr. Harper included, that you're not just good, you're amazing. Let's form a team. We'll crush it." At first, Marcus hesitated. Competitions weren't really his thing. He preferred working behind the scenes, letting his grades speak for themselves. But the more he thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. This wasn't just about proving Dr. Harper wrong. It was about proving himself right. About showing the world that talent has no boundaries, whether it's race, background, or anything else. "All right," Marcus said finally, a small smile breaking through his frustration. "Let's do it. But we're going to have to put in serious work." Jamal grinned. "That's what I'm talking about. You won't regret this, bro. We're gonna blow them away." Over the next few days, word spread around campus about Marcus and Jamal's plan to enter the competition. Some students were supportive, offering words of encouragement or tips on how to prepare. Others, however, whispered doubts, wondering if Marcus was biting off more than he could chew. Dr. Harper herself caught wind of the news during office hours when another student casually mentioned it. Her reaction was subtle. A slight pause, a flicker of curiosity. But it lingered in her mind long after the conversation ended. For Marcus, the decision to compete marked a turning point. It wasn't just about solving equations anymore. It was about standing tall in the face of doubt and proving that brilliance comes in all forms. With Jamal by his side, he felt ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks leading up to the math competition, Marcus and Jamal threw themselves into preparation with an intensity that left little room for anything else. Their days became a blur of textbooks, notebooks, and late-night brainstorming sessions, fueled by cups of coffee from the campus cafe. They transformed a small corner of the library into their unofficial headquarters, filling the table with scribbled papers, open laptops, and stacks of reference books. The air buzzed with energy as they tackled problem after problem, determined to leave no stone unturned. Marcus took charge of breaking down complex theories, explaining them in ways even beginners could understand. His ability to simplify the most intricate concepts made him invaluable to the team. Meanwhile, Jamal brought creativity and fresh perspectives, often suggesting unconventional approaches that pushed Marcus to think outside the box. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, turning their partnership into something greater than the sum of its parts. Their practice sessions weren't without challenges. Some problems stumped them for hours, leaving both frustrated and exhausted. There were moments when doubt crept in, times when Marcus wondered if entering the competition had been a mistake. But every time he felt like giving up, Jamal reminded him why they were doing this. "Remember what Dr. Harper said?" Jamal would tease with a grin. "Let's show her she was wrong. About everything." As word of their dedication spread, more students began stopping by to watch them work. At first, it was just a few curious classmates, but soon their study area attracted a steady stream of visitors. People marveled at how Marcus could solve problems so effortlessly, his explanations clear and concise. Even those who hadn't paid much attention to him before started seeing him in a new light. A group of freshmen once approached timidly, asking if Marcus could explain a concept they'd been struggling with in class. He didn't hesitate to help, patiently guiding them through the material until they understood. By the end of the session, the freshmen left inspired, whispering among themselves about how lucky they were to have someone like Marcus at the university. The growing support wasn't limited to peers. One day, Professor Lin, a kind and approachable instructor from the math department, stopped by to offer encouragement. She had heard about Marcus and Jamal's efforts and wanted to lend a hand. "You two are onto something special," she said warmly. "If you ever need advice or resources, don't hesitate to ask." Her words meant a lot to Marcus, who realized not everyone in academia shared Dr. Harper's biases. It gave him hope that change was possible, even in places resistant to it. Amid all the hustle, Marcus also found time to reflect on his journey. Late at night, when the library emptied out and only the hum of fluorescent lights remained, he thought about where he came from and how far he'd come. He remembered the countless nights spent teaching himself calculus from scratch, the sacrifices his family made to send him to college, and the quiet determination that kept him going when others doubted him. These memories fueled his resolve, reminding him that this competition wasn't just about winning, it was about honoring the person he was and the person he was becoming. By the time the competition drew near, Marcus and Jamal were ready. They had practiced every type of problem imaginable, sharpening their skills and building confidence along the way. More importantly, they had grown closer as friends, united by a shared mission to defy expectations. As they packed their bags for the trip, Marcus couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. This was it, the moment he'd worked so hard for. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't let anyone underestimate him again. The day of the National Collegiate Math Challenge arrived, and the atmosphere at the venue was electric. Teams from universities across the country gathered in a grand auditorium, buzzing with anticipation. The room was filled with sharp minds, calculators, and notebooks, each participant eager to prove their worth. Marcus and Jamal stood among them, their hearts pounding with excitement and nerves. This was the moment they had worked so hard for, a chance to showcase their skills on a national stage. The competition began with a series of warm-up problems designed to ease the teams into the challenge. These were relatively straightforward, but they required precision and speed. Marcus and Jamal breezed through them, their teamwork seamless. As the first round progressed, it became clear that their preparation had paid off. They communicated effortlessly, anticipating each other's thoughts and building on one another's ideas. By the end of the round, they were tied for first place alongside two other teams, earning nods of respect from competitors and judges alike. The second round ramped up the difficulty significantly. Problems now involved multi-step reasoning and real-world applications, testing not only mathematical ability, but also creativity and problem-solving under pressure. One question asked participants to optimize traffic flow in a hypothetical city grid using advanced algorithms. While many teams struggled to even begin, Marcus dove in headfirst. He visualized the scenario as if he were standing in the middle of the grid, imagining how cars moved and where bottlenecks might occur. Within minutes, he sketched out a plan, breaking the problem into smaller parts and assigning tasks to Jamal. Together, they crafted a solution that balanced efficiency with practicality, a feat that left the judges visibly impressed. As the final round approached, tension filled the air. Only the top three teams remained, including Marcus and Jamal. The host announced the last challenge, an unsolved problem related to renewable energy systems. Specifically, teams were tasked with designing a model to maximize solar panel output while minimizing costs over time. It was a notoriously difficult issue, one that industry experts had debated for years. For most teams, the sheer complexity felt overwhelming. But Marcus saw it differently. To him, this wasn't just a math problem. It was a puzzle waiting to be solved. While other teams hesitated, unsure of where to start, Marcus grabbed a marker and began writing equations on the whiteboard provided to each team. His mind raced, connecting concepts he'd learned during late-night study sessions. He broke the problem into phases, understanding the variables, identifying constraints, and finding patterns. Jamal chimed in, suggesting ways to incorporate cost-saving measures without sacrificing performance. Their collaboration was nothing short of remarkable. They complemented each other perfectly, turning what seemed impossible into something achievable. When the timer buzzed, signaling the end of the round, Marcus stepped back from the board, his hands trembling slightly from adrenaline. He glanced at Jamal, who gave him a thumbs up. They had given it their all, pouring every ounce of knowledge and creativity into their solution. Now, all they could do was wait. The judges deliberated for what felt like hours, though it was likely only 20 minutes. When they finally returned, the host took the microphone and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing through the auditorium, "we have a winner." The room fell silent, every eye fixed on him. Then, with a wide smile, he announced, "First place goes to Marcus Johnson and Jamal Carter from Central University." The audience erupted into applause, and Marcus froze for a split second before reality sank in. He turned to Jamal, both of them grinning ear to ear as they walked to the front to accept their trophy. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment forever. In that instant, Marcus realized something profound. This victory wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough. And it was only the beginning. The news of Marcus and Jamal's victory at the National Collegiate Math Challenge spread like wildfire. Within hours, social media was flooded with posts celebrating their achievement. Flips of Marcus explaining his groundbreaking solution to the renewable energy problem went viral, drawing praise from mathematicians, educators, and even industry leaders. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting how a team from Central University had solved a real-world issue that experts had been struggling with for years. Headlines read, "Underdogs Triumph at National Math Competition," and how two students defied expectations and solved the unsolved. Back on campus, the reaction was equally explosive. For days, Marcus and Jamal were stopped in hallways by classmates, professors, and even strangers who wanted to congratulate them or simply shake their hands. Some students admitted they hadn't realized how talented Marcus was until now, while others confessed they doubted him because of the stereotypes Dr. Harper had subtly reinforced. The tide of public opinion shifted dramatically. Marcus was no longer just another face in the crowd. He was a role model, an inspiration to underrepresented students everywhere. For Dr. Harper, however, the news hit differently. At first, she dismissed it as mere luck or hype, telling herself that competitions weren't the same as academic rigor. But curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to watch one of the videos circulating online. In it, Marcus stood confidently before a panel of judges, breaking down his solution step by step. His explanations were clear, innovative, and undeniably brilliant. As she listened, Dr. Harper felt a knot tighten in her stomach. There was no denying it. This wasn't the work of someone who had stumbled upon success by chance. This was genius. That night, Dr. Harper couldn't sleep. She replayed the video over and over in her mind, reflecting on her interactions with Marcus throughout the semester. She thought about the dismissive tone she'd used when speaking to him, the assumptions she'd made based on nothing more than appearances. For the first time, she allowed herself to confront the uncomfortable truth. Her biases had blinded her. Instead of nurturing Marcus's potential, she had tried to undermine it. Determined to make amends, Dr. Harper requested a meeting with Marcus. When he arrived at her office the next day, she gestured for him to sit, her usual stern demeanor replaced by something softer, vulnerability. After a long pause, she spoke. "Marcus, I owe you an apology," she began, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. "I underestimated you, and I treated you unfairly. Watching your performance at the competition, it made me realize how wrong I was." Marcus listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that," he said after a moment. "It means a lot." Then, looking her directly in the eye, he added, "But I hope this isn't just about me. There are so many students out there who face what I did, not just in math, but in every field. They need people like you to see them for who they really are." Dr. Harper swallowed hard, feeling both chastened and inspired. "You're absolutely right," she replied. "And I want to do better. For you, for them, for everyone. Thank you for showing me the way." In the weeks that followed, Dr. Harper began making changes, not just in her teaching style, but in her mindset. She started holding weekly office hours specifically for underrepresented students, creating a safe space where they could ask questions without fear of judgment. During lectures, she encouraged quieter students to share their ideas, reminding herself not to assume anything about their abilities. And perhaps most importantly, she began advocating for diversity initiatives within the department, pushing for scholarships and mentorship programs aimed at leveling the playing field. As for Marcus, life returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such a monumental achievement. He continued excelling in his classes, his confidence bolstered by the recognition he'd earned. But more than anything, he cherished the knowledge that his success had sparked meaningful change. Dr. Harper's apology might not have erased the challenges he'd faced, but it proved that growth was possible, even in the unlikeliest places. As graduation day approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on his journey, the struggles, the victories, and everything in between. He had come a long way from the quiet, reserved student who once sat unnoticed in the back of Dr. Harper's calculus class. Now he was known not just as a brilliant mathematician, but also as someone who had inspired others to challenge their own biases and push beyond limitations. It was only fitting that he would deliver the commencement speech at his university's graduation ceremony. On the morning of the event, Marcus stood backstage, adjusting his cap and gown while trying to calm his nerves. The auditorium was packed with students, faculty members, family, and friends, all eagerly awaiting the speeches that would mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Jamal gave him a reassuring pat on the back. "You've got this, bro," he said with a grin. "Just be yourself." When it was finally time, Marcus walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. He paused for a moment, taking in the sea of faces before him. Then, with a deep breath, he began to speak. "Good morning, everyone," he started, his voice steady and warm. "Today is a day of celebration, a day to honor all we've accomplished and look forward to what lies ahead. But before I talk about the future, I want to take a moment to reflect on something important: doubt." He paused, letting the word hang in the air. Doubt is something we've all faced at some point in our lives. Maybe it came from others, teachers, peers, or even society itself. Or maybe it came from within, whispering that we weren't good enough, smart enough, or strong enough. For me, doubt took many forms. There were times when people underestimated me because of how I looked or where I came from. And honestly, there were moments when I doubted myself too. The audience listened intently, hanging on every word. Marcus continued, "But here's the thing about doubt. It can either hold you back, or it can push you forward. I chose to let it fuel me, to work harder, dig deeper, and prove that talent isn't defined by appearance or background. Along the way, I learned that success isn't just about solving equations or winning competitions. It's about resilience. It's about believing in yourself, even when others don't. And it's about lifting others up so they can believe in themselves too." His eyes scanned the crowd, landing briefly on Dr. Harper, who sat near the front row. She gave him a small, sincere smile, nodding in acknowledgement. Marcus returned the gesture before continuing. "To my fellow graduates, I say this: embrace your uniqueness. Don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of, or what you're not. Use your voice, your talents, and your passions to make a difference in the world. And remember, no matter where life takes you, never forget where you came from. Because those experiences shape us. They teach us humility, gratitude, and strength." By the time Marcus finished speaking, the entire auditorium was on its feet, cheering loudly. Many wiped away tears, moved by his words. Even seasoned professors, accustomed to years of formal ceremonies, found themselves deeply touched. Marcus had done more than deliver a speech. He had shared a message of hope and perseverance that resonated with everyone present. In the months that followed, Marcus's speech gained widespread attention. Clips of it were shared online, inspiring countless viewers around the globe. Educators used it as an example of overcoming adversity, while students cited it as motivation to pursue their dreams despite obstacles. For Marcus, though, The real reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was knowing he had planted seeds of change. Meanwhile, Dr. Harper continued her efforts to create a more inclusive environment in the math department. She introduced workshops on unconscious bias, partnered with organizations promoting diversity in STEM, and personally mentored underrepresented students. Her transformation wasn't perfect, and she still had much to learn, but her actions showed genuine commitment to growth. To Marcus, that meant more than any apology ever could. As Marcus prepared to leave campus for the last time, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he was ready. Armed with knowledge, courage, and a heart full of purpose, he stepped into the future determined to keep breaking barriers and helping others do the same. Years passed, and Marcus Johnson's name became synonymous with brilliance and innovation. After graduating at the top of his class, he pursued advanced degrees in applied mathematics, eventually earning a PhD that took him to the forefront of groundbreaking research. His work focused on solving real-world problems, everything from optimizing renewable energy systems to developing algorithms that improved artificial intelligence and climate modeling. What set Marcus apart wasn't just his technical skill, but his ability to see connections where others saw chaos. He had a gift for turning complex challenges into opportunities, inspiring both peers and proteges along the way. Marcus's success didn't go unnoticed. He received numerous awards, including prestigious fellowships and international accolades that placed him among the most influential mathematicians of his generation. Yet despite his growing fame, he remained grounded, always remembering the journey that shaped him. In interviews, he often spoke about the importance of perseverance, diversity, and representation in STEM fields. Talent is universal, he would say, but opportunity isn't. It's up to all of us to level the playing field. Back at Central University, Dr. Evelyn Harper continued her mission to create a more inclusive academic environment. Inspired by Marcus's example, she became an outspoken advocate for underrepresented students, using her position to champion their potential. She revamped her teaching methods, emphasizing collaboration over competition and encouraging quieter voices to be heard. Her office hours became a safe space where students could seek guidance without fear of judgment. Slowly but surely, she earned back the trust of those she had once underestimated, including Marcus, who occasionally returned to campus as a guest lecturer. One such visit occurred during a special alumni event celebrating the university's contributions to STEM education. As Marcus stood on stage addressing current students, he spotted Dr. Harper sitting in the audience, smiling proudly. Their eyes met briefly, and they exchanged a knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of how far they'd both come since that fateful calculus class years ago. Later, during a panel discussion, Marcus publicly thanked Dr. Harper for her role in his journey, not because of what she had done wrong, but because of how she had grown. "Change starts with recognizing our flaws," he said warmly. "Dr. Harper taught me resilience, but she also showed me that growth is possible when we're willing to listen and learn." The impact of Marcus's legacy extended far beyond Central University. Through mentorship programs and outreach initiatives, he worked tirelessly to ensure that no student felt invisible or undervalued. He partnered with organizations dedicated to increasing access to STEM education for marginalized communities, funding scholarships, and hosting workshops that empowered young minds. Many of these students went on to achieve incredible things themselves, crediting Marcus as the person who believed in them when few others did. As for Dr. Harper, her efforts transformed the culture of the math department. Enrollment among underrepresented groups increased steadily, thanks in part to her advocacy work. Students began referring to her not as the intimidating professor of old, but as someone who genuinely cared about their success. Though she still carried regrets about her past behavior, she found solace in knowing she was making amends, not through words alone, but through action. In time, Marcus's story became a beacon of hope for countless individuals facing similar struggles. It served as a reminder that brilliance exists in every corner of the world, waiting only for the right conditions to shine. And it proved that even moments of doubt and humiliation could lead to triumph if one refused to give up. On a quiet evening years later, Marcus sat at his desk, surrounded by papers filled with equations and notes. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled like stars against the night sky. For a moment, he allowed himself to reflect on everything he had achieved and everything yet to come. Then, with a small smile, he picked up his pen and returned to work. After all, there were still problems to solve, barriers to break, and futures to inspire.